So if you remember last week, Governor J.B. Pritzker sent President Joe Biden a letter saying that the migrant situation is untenable and uncoordinated. Well, the governor yesterday said that migrants not qualified for asylum should be returned. That's after the White House announced that they are indeed moving forward with deportations of Venezuelans here illegally. But the governor was in Chicago yesterday at an event where he was, celebrating the expansion of a cake company, Eli Cake. And he's at Eli's at a podium and shares some thoughts about the importance of helping those in this country as non-citizens get jobs.
Family-owned bakery. I should point out, by the way, I feel that I have contributed to your success. Some of the profitability certainly came out of my pocket. A family-owned business, 3 generations strong, Elis Cheesecake. It's iconic. And for those of us who love Chicago, we brag about this company anywhere that we are in the world. With patrons who travel near and far to get a taste of the best cheesecake the world has to offer, Eli's brings people together, not just for the love of its treats, but also in service to our communities.
And he goes on to talk about how the Eli's company hires migrants to essentially, work there to have jobs and to make a living. They cut, instead of a ribbon, they cut the cake, which is kind of fascinating. So you can watch that, of course, on the governor's Facebook page and see them cut this just enormous cake. But the governor then afterwards took questions from members of the media at an unrelated news conference of sorts, where he was again peppered with questions about migrants, and in particular if the State House is going to be having a supplemental appropriation to give Chicago more money to deal with migrants.
I have not heard of a supplemental that'll be introduced. That's certainly something the legislature might think about doing. But there are plenty of other things to consider, including, as you know, looking at a better nuclear moratorium removal and a few other things that are, the purpose of a veto session.
So the governor hasn't heard of a supplemental appropriation for dealing with the migrant issue. We asked State Senator Steve McClure this yesterday, his thoughts on whether or not there's going to be a supplemental appropriation.
We don't have the funds, and we typically don't have the funds for much of anything that we ever do in this state. But I'll say this, the governor wants to blame Joe Biden on the immigrant crisis right now and blame the governor of Texas and everything else. The governor has been, for the entire time he's been in office, begging people to come here, incentivizing them to come here, gives them free health care where people don't even have to pay co-pays. I've got health insurance, I've got to pay co-pays, and yet I'm paying through my tax dollars for people that are citizens of other countries in this state to get free health insurance where they don't have to pay any co-pays. So why are you going to make all these incentives for people to come here and stay here and then blame everybody else for why they're coming here and staying here? And so I think the excuses from the governor, it's time to create new policies that protect the people of our state and our country. The governor's not been willing to do that. Instead, he wants to blame everybody else for policies that he has created that are encouraging people to come and stay in this state.
So McClure also highlighted how we need to change the state's sanctuary city policies and state policies, where that says local law enforcement cannot give immigration officials access to people behind bars. But you've got the governor who is seeming to say, hey, you know what? We need to deport people. Here he is yesterday reacting to questions on whether there's been progress after he sent a letter to President Joe Biden last week on how they need to shore up the migrant issue.
Well, I will say that they have moved quickly on a number of items. I think you saw that shortly after our letter went to the White House that a determination was made to expand the return of refugees who do not qualify for refugee status. So that's one thing. Another is a very, very close discussion about buses that are coming here, whether some of those buses are potentially breaking the law along the way, and working with the government about the logistics of those buses. Where would they go? Is Chicago the only place they could go? New York the only place they could go? And so those conversations are going, and the White House is taking action in a way that they didn't before. So I'm very pleased about that.
What laws were they breaking by that midnight curfew? Is that the law you're talking about?
No. This is just folks who do not qualify for refugee status. So remember, when they come here, they get sort of temporary asylum status. They're seeking asylum, and they have to go through a process. If they don't meet the requirements for someone who could stay, we're making sure, the federal government anyway, is making sure that those folks are returned.
And again, that's Governor Pritzker talking yesterday about how it's the federal government, not the state, that's doing this. Because in state law, according to the Attorney General's Office for Guidance for Local Law Enforcement on Immigration Issues, for example, a local law enforcement agency in Illinois cannot give an immigrant agent access to individuals in its custody, detain individuals pursuant to a federal administrative warrant, detain individuals pursuant to an immigration detainer request from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or share information about individuals in its custody with federal immigration authorities, among other issues. So again, that sanctuary city policy is really, and the sanctuary state policy is in focus here now, with the governor saying that, hey, we need to deport people who are in this country illegally, who aren't qualified for asylum. As the governor said, asylum seekers are here legally, and that may be the case, but a lot of them are not legal asylum seekers. And the governor recognizing that, saying the White House moving forward with such things is good, and he's encouraged by that. But the governor was at a forum last night where he was at the University of Chicago taking questions from a moderator, but then you had members of the audience ask a question. One in particular was about the migrant issue, and a question directly as to the governor making all of this problem himself, and Democrats, aren't they responsible for this?
Which included funding illegal immigrant students financial aid with taxpayer money and restricting local and state governments and how they can apprehend illegal immigrants. More recently, you penned a letter to Joe Biden saying that the burden of illegal immigrants has been laid, quote, upon a few certain states run by Democrats, which is untenable. But that's not fully true, because for years, Florida and Texas have had a higher illegal immigrant population percentages than Illinois. So I'm wondering, is the reason that you kind of reversed on this issue simply because it's now causing myriad problems in your own state, or is there some other reason?
Well, I appreciate your question, and I think I know from where it comes. I will just say that I believe that we have to help, for example, the state of Texas and the cities in Texas, just like we need to help other cities and states to manage the incoming immigration to the United States. By the way, you called these folks illegal. These are undocumented people. There are many of them in the United States already. They were here for many years, and they should be treated like human beings. They should be given an opportunity, a path towards citizenship. This is all about having comprehensive immigration reform. And in the absence of that, we as a state need to help manage and help these folks to get an education, to try and get a job legally. And we have DACA recipients in the state that I believe we should just immediately give them all citizenship. And there's so much more that we need to do. But what you're describing is not as if blue states believe in immigration and red states don't. The challenge, I know that what's going on in Texas, the challenge is there are an awful lot of people that are in Texas, and it's not just the recent challenge of asylum seekers who are legal, I might add, in this country. Asylum seekers are legal in this country, right? We have undocumented immigrants, and then we have documented asylum seekers. We need to manage all of that, and it has been a failure of Republicans and Democrats, and we all need to come together to solve this problem. Now is the moment to do that.
Thank you. I agree. It's a failure of both parties.
So again, Governor J.B. Pritzker there taking questions from members of an audience at the University of Chicago about immigration. He took a ton of other questions. We'll have to tackle all that stuff tomorrow. I'm Greg Bishop. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air on X, formerly known as Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. Just search Bishop on Air.